Cool. So we have Jonah here today to talk about self-evaluation. Don't forget, after the presentation, we're going to have the Ask Now 3 panel downstairs in 115. And also fill out the feedback form. There is a handy-dandy QR code on the back of the schedule. And if you are unable to fill it out online, they have some paper copies as well in the lobby. So with that, hey, take it away.
Hi, Jonah.
Hey, friends. So, as mentioned, I'm Jonah. I'm from Western Mass.
Hi, Jonah.
I'm going to be running this relatively casually and informally, but I'd like to keep things on track. So if at any point you want to say something or interrupt me, rather than just interrupting me, what we're going to do is have you raise your hand, and then I'm going to point at you, and if you haven't already spoken, I'd like you to introduce yourself, because I know most of you, I don't know all of you, and I'd like to get your names right throughout the presentation.
Hi, Jonah.
So you raise your hand, then I point at you, then you talk. You want to try it again?
Way too many steps.
Okay, try it.
Hi, Jonah.
There we go. That's how we do it. But first, your name. So next time we'll get it. Anyways, so we're going to be talking about self-evaluation, tools, techniques, how you get better at how you do it in the first place. So please, as mentioned, feel free to speak up. At some points I'll be like, so what do you think? And at that point it'd be really great if you responded, because otherwise I'm going to stand here silently for like 10 or 15 seconds hoping somebody responds. And that would be weird. I do weird really well though, so it'll work out. Anyways, self-evaluation is kinda scary, and it's definitely complex and very tricky. It can be scary because when you're evaluating somebody else, it feels like you have a perspective and you're reading them and you're telling them what you're seeing going on with them. When you're evaluating yourself, you're looking at yourself and being like, hey, what did I do wrong today? And that's not always the best place to be. If it doesn't work, if your self-evaluation doesn't help you progress, it's very, very easy to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I can do to get better. I have no clue what's going on with my life, what I'm doing with my judging or outside of judging your life, your career, and just get disheartened and slow down. It's also possible that you're wrong and you hair off in the wrong direction. You're like, this is where I need to focus, and you focus all of your energies there, and it's something that you were doing fine already and you're doing great and you didn't need to spend your energies there. So, what is self-evaluation? Self-evaluation is what I do when I'm trying to go to sleep. I just think about everything that I've done wrong ever, and it's a really handy time of day because I have like all of this time to think about things that I did wrong, how I can do them better, the feedback other people have given me on that. Self-evaluation isn't something that you have to like sit down and write a self-evaluation. You can, of course, sit down and write your self-evaluation and be like, this is me with regard to the qualities of a good judge. But you can also just think about, how could I have done that better? After you handle a judge call, even if it went well, you can think, how can I do that better? After you give a presentation, you can say, how can I do that better? It's just thinking about how you exist in the world. It's a constant thing. So, what is self-evaluation? Let's have some examples. Having just general feelings, like today was a good day. When you've had an event and you rocked that event, you're like, yeah, today was pretty good. And you pat yourself on the back, and I like to do it, actually just reach over and pat myself on the back. It's very satisfying. And that's self-evaluation. It's not detailed, it's not complex, but you're saying, hey, I had these tasks today, I did them, it felt good. You can try and get specific, like, why did it feel like you rocked it? Was it that you were on top of your tasks? Did you have a lot of good positive interactions and conversations with people? Did you get a really weird ruling, a weird situation where it was probably CPV and also LPV at the same time, even though that's probably impossible, and you handled it? Like, did somebody compliment your hair? Like, is that why the day felt good? Just be like, yeah, that's why the day felt good. And having that basis of where your feelings are coming from is a great place to start. It can also be short notes, being like, this is a call that I messed up. And just use that and be like, all right, I need to remember how Oath of Druids works, how it interacts with some nonsense in Legacy or Vintage. Not Legacy, because it's not legal there, because it's really good. you can be a little bit more objective. You can look at like a test or a quiz that you've taken and be like, here are things that I just don't understand. You can also just have discussions with somebody. Talking with somebody else and talking about yourself is a form of self-review. While it's not solo review, you are reviewing yourself. So talking with other people, getting feedback from other people is a form of self-review. And then, of course, there is the self-review, where you go to the judge center and you type in a bunch of words about yourself, and then you click above average or outstanding because you want to feel good about yourself. And then you realize that you're writing a review about somebody else, and you're like, all right, they're great, now back to me. So you have options. So how to self-evaluate? There are going to be a bunch of tools that I'm going to go through. These are my ideas on self-evaluation. This is far from being the be-all and end-all of self-evaluation. We're going to talk about objective and subjective analysis. We're going to talk about filtering your perspective through optimism and pessimism. We're going to talk about various perspectives, looking closer at your actions and stepping back, looking at them from a different angle. Goal-oriented evaluation, where you have goals or challenges that you set yourself and evaluate yourself in context with those. And then you're going to work with some outside influences and how other people can help you improve in your evaluation of yourself. So far making sense? Cool. I'm also going to take a second to talk about different types of feedback. This is often applicable outside of self-evaluation, but there are, in a way, three primary styles of giving feedback to somebody. There is coaching, where you tell somebody how they can improve, what steps they can do to improve. There's evaluation, in which you tell somebody what they did. You just simply evaluate them. And appreciation, where you show appreciation for something that somebody did. You're like, this is what you did very well today. Each person takes feedback differently. Some people need to hear appreciation. For me, somebody saying, you did this great today. I'm like, great, thanks. What did I do? Like, tell me, evaluate me, give me a grade. I want to know how well I did. I don't want to hear that I did well. I want to know what I did right, what I did wrong. Some people want the guidance that comes with coaching. Most people want a mix. And so when you're working on yourself, giving yourself feedback and working with other people, try and figure out what sorts of feedback work for you. So, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I have a pet theory that I stole from my mentor. So,
Is that a real card?
yes, that is a real card. It's the only card that has motivate on it, other than something that was not in English, so it went up here. Anyways, this is a pet theory that I stole from my mentor. Every judge has a reason to be judging, and I think your reason is most likely personal and selfish. I know mine is. Now, this sounds incredibly critical. I'm like, you're judging for you and you don't want to help your community. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it works out to being a good thing as long as you're aware of it. So a lot of people are looking for something. They're looking for respect from their community. They're looking for outwards acceptance. They're looking to prove that they can. For me, it was the reason I became a judge was to prove to myself that I was smart enough to be a judge. And that's why I continue to push myself. I want to prove to myself that I'm smart enough and qualified enough and capable enough to be an L2, to be a team lead, to be a head judge. That's why I push myself. That is my motivation. It's entirely selfish. Other judges are like, I want to prove to other people that I'm the smartest in the room. And while that sounds not exactly good, because it's very greedy and personal, knowing why you're doing things lets you evaluate your actions through a different lens. So I'm curious to see if anybody here has an idea about why they judge. What is your selfish motivation?
Money.
That is a very common motivation. A lot of judges, foils. Oh my God, the foils? I don't know what's in the packet today, but money. That's a very, very reasonable reason. Yes, Megan.
To prove that I have a place in the community.
Cool. Anybody else? Yes.
Running the email to John saying I quit takes too much work.
Fair enough. We have reasons to be here, and knowing why we're here, like, if you're just doing the bare minimum, if you're just getting by, then you're probably not meeting your own motivations. If you're here just for money and you do the bare minimum, sure, you'll get paid. But you know what will get you paid more? Working harder, because you'll get on staff for more events. And so that means even if you have greed, just pure financial greed as your motivation, as long as you're aware of that as your motivation, you can utilize that to improve yourself. Does that make sense? Cool. So, there is, of course, the other side where if you're just greedy and you do the base minimum, that's what you do because you know that your store needs you, then you're going to do the base minimum. Things aren't going to be as great as they could be. So it can lead to bad habits. But again, being aware of it means that you can work around it and improve and grow. So, objective analysis. Objective analysis is the easy part of self-evaluation. What you do here is you look at facts and use facts to figure out what's going on. You're going to want controlled environments and you're going to want hard data. Can I have some examples of hard data on your judging behavior?
Okay. I mean, I guess it could be time to from call to you're at the table.
Sorry, what was that?
How fast you can walk from when you get the call to the table.
Yep.
How long it takes to do tech checks.
Yep.
How many reviews have I written?
Yep.
How often do you get accepted or denied for events?
Yep.
How often do you get asked back to a store to judge?
Yeah, so we can look at numbers and facts. I have, when you take a quiz or a test, you're gonna be like, oh, I got all the questions about triggers wrong. I guess I don't know about triggers. That's a true story. I did not know about triggers for far too long. We can use this information to just, we're like, this is an area of improvement, this is a strength. Like, if I can get to any call anywhere in the room in 5 seconds, all right, I guess I'm the Flash. If it takes me 2 minutes to get to any call, probably a problem. So looking at these facts, you can establish baselines, you can find out discrete information about your performance. And as mentioned, this is the easy stuff. Rules and policy knowledge. If you get a call wrong, there wasn't a, well, maybe lightning bolt can target artifacts. No, it can't. It's a fact. You can't just lightning bolt artifacts for funsies. I don't know why. I mean, yes, electricity and metal, but it doesn't work that way. It's a fact. And so with this information, take it into account. You can find your strengths and weaknesses from an objective perspective. It's much harder to figure out if you need to work on how you hold yourself while talking with other judges or talking with players. There isn't a rule book for how to approach a table. While Manny had a great presentation earlier today about how to handle calls, we're not really gonna have the opportunity to, we can't boil that down to facts. But we do have facts that we can work with. So when you're working on a team, look at what your team's tasks are for the day. Even if you're not the team lead, part of your job is to make sure that your team accomplishes the tasks. If somebody on your team is having a rough day and they're not able to take pairings up as quickly as you need them to, talk with them, figure out what you can do. If your team's not able to accomplish tasks, what part of your day impacted that? If you were doing a deck check, did it take a reasonable amount of time? Did you find a reasonable did you give out penalties when you should have given out penalties? Did you check a clock for an extension when you went down to a table and answered their call? These, again, are facts that you can work with. They tell you distinct and discrete areas of improvement that you can work with. We also want to make sure that we're looking at areas where you're comfortable. On the floor of a Grand Prix, you might get a question wrong that you would normally get right. If you're called to the feature match in the semifinals of a GP, you're the judge there, and Twitch is looking at you and Twitch is like, hey, do you know the answer to this question? You might have a brief panic attack. You might just be like, oh God, I know this, I can't remember it. And you give your ruling and you're wrong. And so we want to look at controlled environments. So looking at tests or conversations with other judges where you don't have as many external pressures is going to lead to better objective analysis. Following so far? Cool. Not a hand.
Thumbs up.
Cool. It looked like a hand. I don't have good glasses. I should get new glasses. Fact.
Fact. Objective analysis.
So, subjective analysis is everything else, which is most of judging. I have like in my notes like this much on objective analysis and like a page and a half on subjective analysis because there's a bit more to it. So what we're going to cover in the next few sections, looking at perspective and filtering our thoughts and processes through optimism or pessimism, is going to be all subjective because it's how you see your actions and how other people see your actions. We're going to be going into pseudopsych and thinking about thinking. We definitely can't be sure about anything because I'm not a therapist. I don't know how brains really work. But I can make educated guesses because I've poked at my brain and been like, hey, how do you react when this happens? And I've talked to a bunch of other judges and a bunch of other people, and we can get ideas of how people react in certain situations. And so we can build up a database of information that we can use subjectively to help analyze people and help them grow. So, I have a quick question for all of you. How often do you lie to yourself?
How would I know?
Is constantly an okay answer?
Yes.
Like right now?
Yeah.
Is that an okay answer? More often than I think.
Yeah. So, it's better if you don't lie to yourself, because if you're lying to yourself while you're trying to evaluate yourself, then your evaluation is going to end up far from ideal. We're going to be looking at things from different angles. Optical illusions of the mind, I wrote in all caps. So, saying don't lie to yourself is all well and good, but how do you not lie to yourself? Any ideas? Can anybody in here tell the truth to themselves?
I mean, I can, I think, but I don't see why other people can't.
Pay
That's my
attention
problem.
to why you're thinking what you're thinking.
Can you say that again?
Pay attention to why you're thinking what you're thinking.
Yes.
Usually when I'm trying to avoid lying to myself, I go back to the objective analysis step. Because then there's numbers, but that's not working.
I mean, it doesn't always work, but you can often find, like, I was wrong, or that could have gone better. That is like, if you answer a call and the player who was perfectly rational at the beginning storms off in a huff and leaves their deck there, you're pretty sure something went wrong there. So we can say, fact, I could have handled that better. And so then you're like, all right, how did I approach this incorrectly? And so, as Ellen says, we can go back to the root cause and go back to our objective analysis, figure out what's wrong, and step forward from there one step at a time. But don't worry about being wrong. While being wrong, of course, isn't the goal. We want to be right. We want to be telling ourselves the truth. You're going to misevaluate things. We can't be perfect at this. The more experience you garner, though, and the more angles you look at something, the more information you're going to have on yourself, on your actions, and so you're going to have better information. You're going to be able to more accurately evaluate yourself and evaluate your actions. We hope. So, subjective analysis, other things that you can, your team leading. How did you build team atmosphere? It's very difficult to say, I had a team atmosphere of 85% positivity. There's no, you can say it was generally positive, like we had a good time, but it's very difficult to say with any degree of certainty, any factual fact, because we're dealing with people and dealing with emotions, dealing with reactions. A couple weeks ago at Eternal Weekend, I was team leading, and I felt like we had a very, very good team atmosphere. A bunch of people on my team were all great friends. I had a great time, they had a great time, and one guy didn't have a great time, and I didn't notice until the end of the day when I was like, hey, how did things go? It was pretty great. He was like, no. And while it felt throughout the day that everybody was having a good time, other people were projecting their energy onto him, and so he was just echoing whatever they were doing, and was essentially protecting, like he wanted to be positive throughout the day, but he wasn't having a good day, but it wasn't clear. So I had to get his perspective on the day before I found out that no, not everybody had a great day. So talking to other people is gonna help you with that. Thinking about things from a different perspective. One of the things that we talk about is that when we're answering a call, there are two players at the table. And while our ruling might make one player very happy, that probably means their opponent, who wants them to not be happy, is very not happy. And so we need to remember to look at calls and interactions with other people from the angle of all participants. And our experience with handling floor rulings can help us with that. So, filtering with optimism. Here's a question. This is a follow-up on how many of you tell the truth to yourself. How many of you are realists? Okay, so I call myself a realist, but what I mean is I'm a pessimist who wants to be an optimist.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, all right. So, balancing perspectives and balancing optimism and pessimism is, not the easiest thing to do. When you're looking at an event, something has to have gone right. Even if it was the worst event you have ever had, your worst day judging, something has to have, you were there and you were wearing black pants and you did it. Optimism. The shirt was the wrong color, but pants nailed it. You have to, even in the darkest moments when it's like everything seems to be falling apart and you're not confident in yourself, you can go back to your roots and be like, hey, this is working for me. I did this, I got some of it right. There are areas to improve on, sure. Putting on a black shirt, I can do that next time. But I put the pants on today. That's what counts. Tomorrow I'll put on the shirt and the belt, shoes, everything will be great. It's difficult to force optimism, especially if you've had a bad day. If you've had a bad day, you're feeling bad and you're not particularly excited about feeling good about things. Sometimes you just want to curl up and grouch all day or all week or all month, and that happens. But positivity begets positivity. If you find one thing that went right for you, then find something that somebody else on your event did right. I was at an event recently where I really felt out of sorts. Like, I was going around trying to talk to people, trying to spark conversation, and I just wasn't getting there with anybody. I had no substantial conversations with any other judge on staff. I didn't have any positive interactions. But at the end of the day, I was like, okay, this day felt kind of sucky, because part of why I judge is to have those conversations with people I see as my friends. I want to have these conversations where they help me grow, where I help them grow, where we share knowledge. And I had none of that. And so the day felt bad. But I was like, well, what went well? Every single person that I saw was on task throughout the day, including myself. Everybody was focusing on their jobs. And the reason we weren't having those conversations was because we were tightly staffed and tasks needed to get done. And that was just something that I wasn't observing at the time. But hey, tasks got done. And so I looked at that and I was like, all right, tasks got done. What else happened? Well, there was somebody who's new to team leading, and they made sure that their team's tasks got done. And when I talked to them at the end of the day, they were like, yeah, while I didn't have the best team environment because we were stretched thin and we had to be working, we could group up and have conversations, our tasks got done and we had fun, we knew we were part of the team. And I was like, all right, we got that. And as I talked to more and more people throughout the day, they're like, yeah, you were moving throughout the event. You were talking to everybody throughout the day. You were a presence and we noticed you trying to bring the event together despite the fact that we were all busy and off doing our own thing. You were there to bring us together. And I was like, I did not notice that at all because I was busy not feeling good about myself. But I had more conversations with more people, and I'm realizing that that was a challenging day for everybody there, and that a lot of people gained a lot, not just from my conversations, but from what was happening. And they realized that, yeah, not the best day, but when we started looking at it and being like, hey, something had to have gone right, what did? We found things that went right, and it turned out that it wasn't as bad as we initially thought it was. Of course, if you're overly positive, you can very easily miss things that went wrong. So you remember how in our earlier example, you put on the black pants and forgot the shirt. Next day you put on the shirt and you're like, yeah, nailed it. But you forget the pants. That's not a good thing. We're kind of like staying in the same place. So keep an eye on what's going on.
I never wear pants.
Skirts.
Same.
I hear skirts are very good. Another thing, yeah, so another story, rocking event, felt good, optimist, having a lot of good conversations. Somebody's like, hey, you know those pairings you were supposed to take down? I'm like, yeah, what about them? They're like, why are they still up? They're like, because I was on top of the world over there talking about other things. And so focused on the positive feelings and my optimism, lost track of my task. That's not a great thing. So for too optimistic, we can always lose hope. We can be pessimists. So it can be dangerous it can be dangerous to be too optimistic. And shockingly, it can be dangerous to be too pessimistic. But pessimism is very important. One of the most dangerous things you can do while trying to evaluate yourself is buy into the myth of you. Something that happens in the judge program is that we praise publicly. Exemplar is like, hey, you did a great job, you did a great job, you did a great job. People from the past 3 or 4 months are telling you, hey, you did a great job. Even if you're not receiving exemplar, people are like, this weekend I had a wonderful time thanks to Krug and Allie and Zach. Like, they made my weekend a blast, they were all there, we had a great time. If you keep on hearing this positive feedback and people are like, yeah, you're doing a great job, and other people are like, yeah, you keep on doing a great job, and then every once in a while somebody gives you some critical feedback, it's very, very, very easy to let that positive feedback overwhelm the critical feedback. And it's not to say that you're a bad judge, but if you're hearing this and people are sharing stories about, you know, that one time you handled that really weird call, or that one time we were on this call and this weird thing happened and you handled it great, you'll start to buy into a myth. People will be like, yeah, you can do anything. Like, they'll tell you, like, you did a great job team leading. And the next time you team lead, you did a great job team leading. And they're evaluating you from your first time team leading, your second time team leading. And the third time you team lead, you do the same thing you did the last 2 times. No preparation, no idea what's going on, but you've done this twice before. You should know better than this. And that's because you bought into the myth of yourself. People tell you nice things and you accept that. Has that happened to anybody in here? Yeah. So how do you get out of that? How do you not buy into that myth? How do you not accept that positive feedback that feels so good to get?
You constantly tell yourself you're crap.
So that
He's got it.
that can work. But it's also not the best thing to be saying, hey, I'm crap. These people are all making stuff up. I don't deserve any of these compliments. Because, again, we're on the wrong side of where we want to be. We want to be realists, not pessimists who want to be optimists.
I'm a narcissist, but I also have anxiety, so it totally balances out.
How many of us are narcissists? Out of curiosity, point to yourself if you're a narcissist. Yeah. Cool. So, you're not perfect, and you never will be. And I'm sorry I'm the one who had to break that to you, if you didn't already know that. But you can try to be perfect. You can work towards it. Your strengths are going to be highlighted publicly and lauded, while weaknesses are going to come to you in reviews or in one-on-one conversations. People aren't going to take that review that says, hey, here are all the things you did wrong at the GP this weekend and post it on Facebook. because that's really not nice. But you need to have conversations with people where you're like, hey, let's talk about my weaknesses. Let's be critical of me. What is the worst thing that I did? How can I fix that? So, in a similar vein, you're going to need to step back. Your mind is warped by this summoned spirit. You see your actions from a very particular perspective that nobody else in the universe has, from your own seat, from your own eyes. When you do something, you know the intent behind your actions. When you come up with a plan for side events, or when you come up with a plan for deck checks, and like deck list collection and playmat distribution doesn't go the way you think it should have, it looks like it's a disaster from every angle, except from yours, because you're like, nah, this is going according to my plan. It's a weird plan, but it's going according to plan. Other people aren't going to see that intent. You need to step back and try and evaluate yourself from the perspective of somebody else. And this is probably one of the hardest things you can do, because it's very difficult to separate yourself from yourself, because you're one person most of the time. Having this warped perspective can very, very, very easily, and I know it happens to me, cause defensive behaviors, causes you to come up with excuses, reasons, rationale. When they say, hey, when I came up to you and I had a question for you, you just kind of blew me off. I wasn't ignoring you, I was on task. It doesn't matter what your intent was, what you were in the middle of. It looks like from their perspective that you're just like, go away, I can't talk to you right now, without a reason. So perspective and perception matters immensely. It doesn't matter if every single action you do is perfect and by the book, if what people see is some crazy monster just shooting from the hip every 10 seconds, being like, that's a rule in, that's a rule in. And just being like, hey, nonsense. You need to be able to be perceived as somebody who's rational and straightforward so that people can put their trust in you. Perception, while it may differ from reality, is possibly more important because, that's how other people perceive you, and so that's their reality. Try instead of giving excuses or rationale, see if their feedback changes if you give them the extra information you are working with. So let's say you were in the middle of an investigation and somebody came up to you and you just blew them off. You said, so thank you for the feedback. Accept the feedback, consider it, and say, would your perspective change? Would your feedback change if you knew, like I was in the middle of this investigation, I was going from the player, I need to get the head judge for this. Does that change your feedback? And it's possible that they say, yes, that changes it. I understand that you weren't blowing me off. However, it's very likely that no, it doesn't change their perception. Even though they have more knowledge to work with, it's gonna make them continue. They're like, you still blew me off. You could have said, investigation busy. And that's the information that they need in the moment. So if you reject feedback or criticism and you get defensive and create excuses or have rationale, while it makes sense that you're like, no, there was a reason why I did this, and it makes sense, and if you explain to them, it makes sense to them. It means that you're ignoring the feedback that you're being given. If you take somebody's feedback and say, no, but it's not entirely true, you're just saying, no, it's not true at all, because you're not accepting it fully. Step back and forget your thought process when somebody's giving you feedback. Accept their perspective, because their perspective is how they saw it. That's their reality. You need to be aware of what's happening to them. Find somebody who doesn't know your exact thought process, which is pretty much everyone, because they're not you, and present them the situation. Present them with what happened from the other side of the story. Don't give them your thoughts. Just say, these are the facts of the event. and get feedback on those pure facts without any intent or motivation, because that'll tell you how people saw your action without the messiness of intent or motivation. You can also just imagine somebody did what you just did, but they're not you. Let's say my good friend Josh over here screws up a ruling, I give him some terrible feedback. He should pretend that I gave this ruling and was like, how would he give me feedback? How would he tell me to improve on that? And then just cross off my name and put his own name in there, and hurrah, self-evaluation. It's a little bit wonky, but just distancing yourself is difficult, but it is very important so that you're separated from your intents, which can warp perspective. Of course, back on the other side of the spectrum, you want to look closer. You have knowledge that nobody else does. You do know your intent and your motivation. You know your entire thought process behind why you did what you did. I mean, it's very possible that you just make up everything on the fly and you're some sort of whiz kid and you never think about anything. Raise your hand if that's you. Nobody? Oh, you come up with everything? Oh, huh. You tricked me.
Yep.
Cool. So, if you can, while you're doing planning, write down your thinking, write down what you're doing so that you can reflect on it later. Another thing that you can do, which is something that I got from a team lead recently, was take yourself and put yourself in one of the Ravnican guilds. Just be like, what is my personality thing? Because that's something it's a framework that we all understand. You can be like, I'm Rakdos, and I just set events on fire that giggle as I run out the doors. If you're Rakdos, please don't. Most other guilds are like, you're like, I just sort of eat everybody and then leave. Good job, Golgari. We prefer like Azorius, maybe Boros, Orzhov, I guess.
What about Simic?
I don't know if I want a civic judge. Yes, Megan.
As a Golgari mage, I resent that comment.
Am I wrong though?
I feel like I was just taking that advice and thinking about that, and I was like, I feel like as a Golgari mage, that would mean that I could take something somebody else is having trouble with and recycle it and do something better with it.
Yeah.
And then you said, and I'm gonna eat people.
Yeah, and then you recycle them. So, look closer. Write down your thought process, take notes thoroughly, and be able to look back and be like, so this is why I chose to pair these people on deck checks together, and this is why it went wrong. And with that information, you have insider access that nobody else does. You also want to listen to outside influences. As I've been talking throughout this, talking with other people, self-evaluation doesn't mean solo evaluation. While you're doing the majority of thinking, other people, and non-judges are people too, despite what some of us may think, they have useful thoughts. They can say, this is what it looked like you were doing. This is what I saw happening. They have a perspective that you don't. They're going to be able to say, yeah, it looked like you were brushing that other judge off. It looked like you were focused on a task and you weren't brushing them off. It's a lot easier to watch somebody else do something than it is to do something and evaluate yourself on it. So if you want feedback on a task and you want to improve on a particular task and you want to evaluate yourself on it, ask somebody else to keep an eye on it. Because imagine team leading and evaluating yourself on team leading. Doable, but a lot harder than simply just team leading. Now, if you have somebody else who's on your team evaluate your team leading, you get that feedback, you get that information, but it's a lot simpler and you're focused on one thing rather than multitasking. Compare yourself to the perspective of outsiders. See where the differences lie. If somebody says, you look lazy, and you're like, no, I was visible, there's a difference in perspective. I've had some judges say things to me that I did not see or didn't see it. Eric Aliff recently called me complacent. I did not see that at all. I'm very much, things are great, everything's fine, don't need to worry about it. Joe Hudo called me quiet. I saw that, I knew that I was quiet, but I didn't understand how much it was affecting my judging, my presence, how I was team leading. Megan called me approachable. Megan Linscott over there. Hi, Megan. I did not nobody had called me approachable before. I didn't understand that, and it changed how I interacted with judges. And all of this feedback was feedback that I couldn't have gotten by just continuing to think about myself, because it's not something that I had seen. So talking to other people, getting their outside influences is very important. But in the end, you're going to be making your own judgments. So, what makes you learn? For me, goals are very important. I set myself a goal, I try to achieve it. Goals and challenges are very similar. Challenges I see as something that isn't time limited or even reasonable. It's just something for me to work towards. Goals for longer term, for self-evaluation, I like to look at SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time limited. These are very specific. It's like, I want to be able to do this thing in this way. And they're goals that you can just benchmark yourself on. Be like, hey, I want to be able to do a deck check in 4 minutes. And you start doing them in 7 minutes, and then 6 minutes, then 5 minutes, and then 4 minutes. And you're like, I want to do it by the end of the year. And so you have yourself a time limit, it's attainable, you have a goal, it gives you something to work towards. Challenges are similar, but things that I don't know if I can accomplish. Stretch goals, essentially, that make me work. They can be cooperative, they can be competitive. It could be, I want to be able to complete a deck check faster than Ben today. Every single deck check, I want to be faster than Ben. And Ben's good at deck checks, so now I have a competitive challenge for me. It's not necessarily a goal, it's not necessarily perfect, but it's a challenge for me. Benchmarks are also something that are incredibly important. Take tests, evaluate yourselves, get facts, and keep track of them. Write a self-evaluation of yourself. They let you then, a few months down the road, write another one. These self-evaluations, these tests, they're going to provide facts and information that you can look at and be like, this is where I thought I was 3 months ago. Now I can look at that and say, I was wrong. 3 months ago I was in a very different spot. Now let's think about where I am today. Having these benchmarks allow you to, it gives you another perspective. It essentially gives you a little time machine that you can run around in. However, there is the danger of, if you begin to backslide, you might start an avalanche. If you see yourself failing to progress and then falling backwards with these benchmarks, it's very possible that you just continue to go that way. And if you start to see that, reach out and talk to somebody else. So, how many of you have written a self-evaluation in the past 6 months? Cool, we got one hand. Past year? Cool. Ever? Okay, okay. I have a task for every single one of you. How many of you have been judging for more than a week? Cool. I want you to write a self-evaluation. I want you to do it within the next week. Self-evaluations, even if it's not the big L3 prep self-evaluation, it's incredibly useful. Lets you have notes that say, this is where I think I am. It's not something to be afraid of. You don't have to show anyone. You don't even have to put it on judge section. You can leave it in your Google Docs. You can put it in your notebook, and then after writing it, burn it. I don't care. I want you to write it. You can submit it to the verification committee if you want. But your self-review is for you. It's not for anybody else. It's so that you can grow. If you don't know what to write about, you can look at the qualities for an L3. They're different in quantity. An L1 isn't expected to have the same level of rules knowledge as an L3, but you're still expected to have some rules knowledge. And you're going to be able to look at these qualities and say, hey, how am I doing at this? And hopefully after this little chat, you're a little bit better at self-evaluation. When you're looking at these qualities, though, if you want to evaluate on area of improvement or strength, keep in mind that you're not perfect and you're not 100% one way or the other. Grade yourself compared to the judge you want to be, not the perfect robot judge, who's a mix of, I think, EDB and Abe Corson with a little bit of Ricky Hayashi mixed in there. Anyways, I prefer, when I'm writing my self-evaluations, to just drop it all in the comment section, because if we look at any given quality, it's not all strength, it's not all area of improvement, it's a mix. And so just write your self-evaluation, write it again, do it again. Write one every 3 to 6 months. Write a review as often as you write reviews for other judges. If you're reviewing another judge more often than you're reviewing yourself, change that. Review yourself more. So, that's almost the end. Before we go, we have a couple minutes left. I wanted to,
Bless
go through a quick self-evaluation of myself. I have a couple questions for myself that I want to answer, because I think that self-evaluation, even as mentioned, not a solo thing. So, how prepared was I? I felt like I was relatively prepared. I have my shiny little Prezi, has nice transitions. I have my page of notes. I knew what I wanted to talk about. How do we feel about how prepared I was? Thumbs up, couple thumbs up, great. Was it educational? People learned something. Cool. Feel like we're in the same boat. Was it entertaining?
Yes.
I made some funny jokes, a couple. All right, that's all I can hope for. Did I stay on track? Did I control the audience? In the past, I've had difficulty. Some members of the audience started talking a lot, and I lost control, and was just like, yeah, we're talking about some completely different tangential thing. For the most part, though, I think I stayed on topic. There were a couple tangents here and there, but for the most part, on topic. How well did this on-the-fly self-evaluation thing go? This right here? Pretty all right? Cool. So, Inception self-evaluation. Any questions before I let you all go? Any comments? Yes?
You say your glass is bad count as self-evaluation, or the glass is considered independent of you?
Not sure. Anything else? Great. Thank you all for being here. And now we get to go talk to some L3s. Hooray!
All right, don't forget.